But welcome to tonight's BullCharts user group webinar. We're getting underway. Tonight in this session, I've got some slides prepared that I will share with everyone. We'll talk about BullCharts software, and one of our users, Cole, is going to demonstrate how he uses one of the BullCharts features. And please remember that tonight, any information presented or discussed is opinion only. It's not advice. And because we can't take into consideration your own personal financial needs, you do need to consult a licensed professional advisor if you wish to participate in the market. So for the July sessions this month, we had our Melbourne meeting a week ago. And as usual, we have this webinar 1 week later. And I use the same agenda for both. And the plan for this month of July was to talk about the BullCharts scan feature. And some of you might have read this, so I won't read it out. And some of it is recapped, reset in the slides that I'll be sharing shortly. And Cole's going to, as I said earlier, show us how he uses the MultiScan. The share trading game, well, we can discuss that if you wish at that time in the agenda. We usually also have an agenda item to explore BullCharts tips. We note that the latest version that most people are using for BullCharts is 5.1133. Now, some people might be using a later version with a high number, 135 or 138. They are beta test versions with some other features enhanced or some bugs that they've tried to fix and address and test for. We can have a discussion about BullCharts in that segment in the agenda. We had a chat in the meeting last week about index constituents. And I guess the important thing to note there is that it is really, really difficult for anyone to know exactly which securities are in each of the indexes on the ASX exchange in the market. It's very difficult to know because to find out exactly, you've actually got to pay someone a lot of money. And it's more money than what retail traders are willing to spend. And so you can go to any website, including brokers like CommSec, and look at the market index website, which is fairly good. And you will find that there are discrepancies. There are some stocks not included in their index listings when they should be, and some that are there that shouldn't be there. So that's a conclusion that a few of us have drawn after studying that quite intensely. These few slides are some thoughts about BullCharts scan. In the top left corner here, I've got a screenshot of one of the scans, supplied scans. We'll talk about those. Towards the bottom right, there's a screenshot of the MultiScan feature, and we'll talk about that. And this is only part one of information about the BullCharts scanning feature. And some of you, I know some of you have been using BullCharts for a long time, and a couple of you for not very long. I realize that. And for others, I'm not sure. But anyway, BullCharts is feature and function rich, and many users only use a small portion of the full capability. It's just like Microsoft Word and Excel and those other software products that are so, what's the word for it, in widespread use around the traps. A lot of people use a small portion of the product, and that's okay. They use what they need and what they're comfortable with. This presentation provides some useful information about the BullCharts Market Scan feature and the BullCharts Scan Manager. Now, if any of you are trying to follow along while we do this, in BullCharts, the control panel is this thing that I have undocked from the side of my window. If you ever do that, you can redock it again, like so. And there's a little pin near the top right-hand corner. If you click on that, it'll auto-hide. And tucked away on the right-hand side are the 6 tabs that allow you to open it, including the Layer Manager and the Workspace Manager. and clicking that will lock it again. And for some reason, my bull chart says it's lost connection. Hopefully I'm still talking. So this control panel has 6 tabs across the bottom. Securities is usually the first one. And the second one is usually Scan Manager. Now, these little tabs across the bottom, you can click on one of those and drag that particular panel to another portion of the screen or change the sequence. And some people do that inadvertently without realizing what they're doing. And that's okay. That doesn't matter at all. So here's the BullScan Manager. And at the moment, I'm looking at a list of scans that I've got sorted by name. So this part 1 is an introduction to the Scan Manager, and subsequent presentations that we might do sometime over the next few months will cover more details. Here are some questions for you to think about, especially those of you who have not really gotten into using scans yet and Scan Manager. And the question I want you to think about is, how do you go about finding stocks to invest in or trade? And when I say stocks, strictly that refers to shares on the share market. But don't forget that the share market these days also includes ETFs. So there's a whole lot of things. There's also other exchange traded products that are included. But how do you go about finding them? Now, when you want to do a market scan, do you find running the scan time consuming or not ideal? That's a possibility as well. Do you start out with a detailed plan, knowing exactly what you're going to do? Or if you're doing a market scan in BullCharts or on a broker website or wherever, do you just jump into it and make it up as you go along, which I think is a dangerous way to do it. And if you've got BullCharts and you've got a couple of scans that you like to run always, same day or same week, every week, then do you find it a little bit time consuming? Would you like to automate it somehow? What we'll do is we'll answer some of those questions here tonight. So the market scan feature in BullCharts has several options or parameters, including which date do you want to run the scan at? Is it the latest date or is it one in the past? And do you want to run it across daily data or weekly or monthly? And there are a couple of other options that might not make much sense to some of you at the moment. Things like match all criteria. If you've got a scan with a number of criteria, do you want all of them to be satisfied? If you're looking at weekly or monthly data and the week or the month is not yet over, do you want to include the incomplete period? Or do you want to use rolling periods? So those are options as well. And there are a few other different parameters and options that can be specified. I've got here a screenshot of the BullScan Properties dialog box, which has 4 tabs across the top. And this is the second tab where we specify scan criteria. And we can also specify which date to run the scan at, as well as the other things I mentioned before. And the other thing to think about is if you've got lots of scans, if you're writing scans, it's very useful to make sure that you've got a useful scan name, a scan category, and a scan author specified in your scan definition. So, gather thoughts. Before opening BullCharts and going to the Scan Manager, I think it's important to consider the following. The scan criteria. That is, what condition are you looking for? Is it the share price or maybe an indicator with a specific condition that you want met? Maybe share price rising every day for 5 days. That's not perhaps a good one, but as an example, that's a simple one. Or maybe share price above the 20-period EMA. That's the exponential moving average, as well as the share price rising from week to week. You might want that to be your criteria. In this example, though, how would you specify exactly what share price rising means? There are a few ways to do that. One is to look at the latest or the current share price and compare it to the previous one. And don't forget, if you've studied share price movement long enough, you'll know that share prices tend to go up for a little while, then fall for a little while, then go up some more, and then fall some more. So just looking at the latest share price compared with the previous one is not foolproof. Maybe a moving average of the share price is rising. That I find is a more reliable way to look at a constantly rising share price. The average of it is rising. But if you're looking at a moving average, is it just for the current period compared to the previous period? Or do you want the moving average rising every period for the last, who knows, number of periods? Having the moving average rising over, say, 5 or 10 bars or candles on daily or weekly charts is maybe one way to look at it. In addition to that, do you want to consider only the share price items, the open, hollow, closed, volume, or value, or do you also want to look at an indicator? Before you sit down at your BullCharts terminal, screen, laptop, desktop, and start tapping away on the scan manager, it's useful to get all these thoughts sorted out in your head. If you want to use an indicator, have some ideas about which one. What about your stock universe? Do you really want to scan across the whole of the market? Don't forget the ASX has more than 2,000 securities, including your liquid ones. Now, let's just go back to BullCharts for the moment and have a look at all securities. And we'll see that down the bottom here, in the bottom portion of this panel, there's currently 2,370 securities listed on the ASX. Now, some of those will be shares, some will be ETFs, some will be REITs. Do you want to scan across all of those sorts of things? The other thing that I could show you, but would be digressing tonight, is the market cap. A number of the shares or securities on that list have a market cap of less than $10 million, whereas some of them have a very large market cap. And the largest ones at the moment are companies like BHP and Commonwealth Bank. So when you scan the market, do you want to scan everything or only the large caps? Do you want to include the penny dreadfuls or exclude the penny dreadfuls? Some of the penny dreadfuls, they'll only trade once or twice or 3 times a week, which is not very often. And it's difficult. If you've got a position in one of those, it's difficult to close it quickly. Or maybe what you want to do is look at the securities in a particular index. Some people like to look at the XKO. That is the top 300 index. Now, ignore the couple of holes in this one. Or that you might want to look at the XJO or maybe the All Ordinaries, the XAO, supposedly 500 stocks. There are some things to think about. If you don't want to scan across any of those particular groups, you might want to make up your own custom watch list. I've got a custom watch list that I regenerate every month. It's this one here. And at the moment, there's 935 stocks, securities in that watch list. And they are mid to large cap stocks that trade often enough, at least 50 times a day. They trade often enough to be what I call liquid. It's interesting because 5 years ago, there were only 550, 600 stocks, securities in that list. Today, there's, as it says there, 935. And that's what I scan across. So when creating a scan, do you want to start from scratch or copy an existing? Don't forget, there are 135 supplied scans in BullCharts listed under several different categories, and they're also listed by author groupings. So it might be useful to get some ideas from one of those. And it's easy enough to copy one of those and make changes to the copy. So all of the scans that we've got in BullCharts, all of the supplied ones, plus any that you've created, can be viewed by name or category or author. by using the extra tab at the bottom of Scan Manager. Excuse me. Now ready to open Scan Manager and have a look. When you're creating scans, don't forget, as I said earlier, it's useful to have a scan name. This is a good example. This is a scan that was created using Alan Hull's trading strategy for traders, not investors, called Rising Equities. And there's a useful category there, bullish, and the author is specified in the scan, and a useful scan name. And in the notes box field in that scan definition, there is some text about where to find more information. One of the other features that we'll talk about is MultiScan, and Cole is going to demonstrate that for us tonight. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen and ask Cole to take over. Cole, it's over to you.
Thank you, Rob.
Just before you start, I should mention to everyone present that Cole is a proficient user of BullCharts and been using it for a long time and knows a number of features of BullCharts fairly well. And he's going to talk to us tonight in particular about the multi-scan feature in BullCharts. Cole, it's over to you. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, been with the system for a long time, but after retirement, I find that day in, day out, I'm spending more and more time in BullCharts and getting better at some of the features. Not that I'm an expert, but I certainly enjoy it. So I'm just going to run through tonight this using MultiScan in BullCharts. I do have a PowerPoint and I'll do some live demonstrations. I'll run the lives at the appropriate points in the presentation, which means I'll be bringing BullCharts across from my second screen. And then when that's done, I'll shift the BullCharts off to the side. So I think that should be fairly seamless, and I don't see there being any problems with that. What is MultiScan? I think it's just a fabulous feature in BullCharts. I discovered it some years ago when Jim Berg and they retired, and I used to follow the Jim Berg trading systems, and I needed to build myself a weekly scan, much the same criteria that the Berg had, and then inject the daily bid off that weekly scan. So you'll see that tonight. Essentially, the facility lets you select several scans and run them automatically, which is just so time consuming and efficient. One after the other, no need to launch. I would guess categorize them by refine. You will refeed each scan result into the next to progressively narrow the field. And you'll see that in an example tonight. Particularly in here, and I'll say it now, but I'll repeat it a bit later, the order in which you load the scan is absolutely paramount to get the results you're looking for when you're doing a refined category scan. The batching, and I'll run one here. This is not a particularly, I guess, really smart scan, but it's not a bad example of 4 different scans, which I'll queue and get them to run independently back to back. And then the beauty about this, which is also a great feature, once they run, you can actually run a combined watch list if you so desire. I'm using that feature more and more. I suppose I started using it about 3 months ago. So 2 ways to run the multi-scan, refine and batch by, I guess, my category identification. And as I said, I'll run 2 examples of that tonight. I'll run 1 example and create a watch list off this batching. So the results from the preceding scan are in refine. Each scan matches become the input list for the next scan. And that's why the scan order changes the outcome. Sequence matters. The field narrows step by step down the chain and produces one final refined result set. So that might be a multiple number of stocks that come out of it, or it might just be one. And you'll see tonight in the one I'm running, which is a very simple one, we get 1 out of something like 45 stocks that come out of the preceding scan. The batching, every scan runs against its starting watch list. Now, I used to think you had to use the same, the same universe, but I don't believe that's the case. I've tried it with running separate universes and they just run independently. And again, you might have a stock at 300 or you might have the other at the 50s. I have a number of watch lists that I have, and I'll run them against different watch lists and combine them. So every scan runs against its starting watch list. The scans execute back to back independently, and you'll see them roll out as they're running through the scans. And when we're running this tonight, if you look down the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see scan 1 being run, then you'll see scan 2, 3, and 4. And depending how they land on the page, I may then just reorganize them on the page so they're clear to look at. So what's it saying here? Each scan opens its own result window. Order here doesn't matter. It's just a convenience, and results don't change. So that's the two types of, or groups, if you like, categories of MultiScan that I particularly use. So the first one I'm going to run is looking at a weekly trend for a daily entry. And I'll run to that very shortly. But again, this comes to some of what Robert was just talking about. And it's interestingly enough that when I look at my weeklies, I'm looking for greater than 34 EMA in the last 5 days. I'll probably jump into the criteria once I run the screen and show you that. So what I might do now is, what we'll see as I run these, this is going to be the dashboard that you see. This is the scans as I load them. So what I've got is a Jim Berg rising trend weekly. And off that result, I look at the daily incomes based on a few criteria, including the RSI 7. What's to note here are these radial buttons. Because I want this to be a refined scan, that is, the results I'm going to look at for my daily entries off the weekly trend, you need to use the result from the preceding scan. What you'll see when we do the batching is that this other radial button needs to be pressed to get them to just load independently. You'll see as I run this, there'll be 45 returns from this weekly rising trend. Now, again, you'd think Robert and I had almost collaborated, but this is work that I'd done back on the 8th of the 7th. And out of those 45 scans, the daily scan, looking across these 45, gave me the 1 BSL. And that 45 actually comes from a universe of about 200 stocks. All right, I'll just run that now and we'll see it happen. Now, the important part here is when you're wanting to bring these together, you left click, obviously you click on that and then shift and click on the other scan that you want to run in the refinement. You'll see that from what I said before. That gives you the 2 scans in the order. And you'll notice here that it defaults to use the results from the preceding scan. So I'm going to run that. You see down here, it's going through the scan. There'll be about 200 stocks. And it's actually found 45 that met the criteria for the weekly. And it's given me 1 BSL. I'm just going to open that just for fun. I didn't trade this. But another interesting feature is you can load a number of templates. And this is the standard template I use for this scan. And you can see here, these are features that are inbuilt in BullCharts. This marker is relevant to the Jim Berg entry signal. And this is the scan date that actually pre-populates on the chart when you've run the scan from it, and actually come off the chart on the side here, pick up that, it'll actually mark where the scan was run. And what I'm going to do here very quickly, Robert, I'll just do this just to pick up on what Rob was saying about the criteria. Not that I'm saying by any means these are the best scans in the world. It's just ones that I use. I'm saying the close is greater than the 34 exponential moving average of close. And this is where I look for the 34 bar exponential greater than the same over the last 5 bars. Interestingly enough, you can see here I've set, just for the purpose of tonight, to run this back on the 8th of July, 2026. And off I go. I don't trade any pennies. 1.8 above, In this particular case, I'm looking for a close less than 50, so I'm trading in that range, and I'm looking for volume greater than 4 million. So I'm looking for the higher liquidity stocks. All right, I'll get out of that. All right, so back into the PowerPoint. Now, this is one that I use a little bit differently, probably a little bit unusual, but I do, excuse me again, I do a number of back tests on the running of the scans. And again, I've only started this probably about 4 months ago in earnest, where I want to know how many times I've run, say, my 15-day low scan, and over the period, how many times has that scan returned a result? And out of those results, regardless of whether it was paper traded, live traded, or just a look back, how many times was that a successful trade, either theoretically or in real trading? And I'm finding that's helping to give me a bit of a better fix on where I'm best putting my cash and spreading across my portfolios. I might shift, an amount of money out of one and put it into another if I'm finding that the number of hits and the exposure is greater in one than the other. So I'm going to run through this. Again, that goes to what I was just talking about, and you can see here. This is an Excel spreadsheet that I run a lot of my record keeping in MX Access database, but these are the 15-day lows, and in my 15-day low, if I don't get in on the next day, I purge the bid, and it's only a 6 to 7 day scan, and you can see here that by running this, I'm able to plug that information in and starting to get some metrics. This is since early July, and as that there's been 20 15-day low scans that I've run. There's only been 3 that have actually returned a result. And out of those 3, I had 2 wins and 1 loss. So that's just, I'm using that as a tool to, and that's the whole reason I developed the scan. So I could get a metric, and I knew, I guess, if you like, what my results were like, rather than not knowing and just hoping that the back testing I'd done was going to hold true to the future. So again, I'm going to run that now in BullScan, and then this is one also that I've gone back and set the date on. You'll see here that there were 5 returns from the preceding scan, and this is my entry check where I look at what happened the day before and have it tell me whether it was within range and whether it's a successful or unsuccessful bid. And I've written a little bit of code, very simple code, that actually I have this printing to either successful or unsuccessful. And you can see here that out of those 5, we had 4 were within the range. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I'd bid them. It's just telling me as a metric that in this particular case, on that particular day, 1 out of those 5 that returned on the day that are on the scan was within range, and theoretically could have been entered the next day. So I'll run that. Just before I do, Rob mentioned earlier about the importance of putting information in these tabs. I've gone to a fair bit of pain to, particularly for my main scans, to populate that fully. Now, this comes out of my trading plan where I've actually got the detail in there. It helps me when I'm in BullCharts, rather than going back to the trading plan and saying, am I in line with this? It tells the story of what that's all about. And basically the criteria, if you like, I break down into the structure, volatility, volume, liquidity, support, and pivot, and on it goes. And then in here, I've got my position sizing parameters. So I actually plugged that in, the general, and I said that's really a copy and paste out of my trading plan. And again, the criteria, I'll have a number of information that I want to actually see up front, and that helps me look at just, certainly the trigger date and a range of information, which can be part of the criteria, but is also additional to what the criteria I'm using is for that scan. I'll just close that. So I'm going to run that now as a multi-scan. So all this is doing is looking at, oh, I'll show you how to run this too. This was run on the 5th of February, the scan. So when I'm looking to see if I actually would have been within range the next day, I then make sure that it's actually the day later, the 6th of February. So I'll get that happening. And again, the preceding scan is informing the last scan. And if you look down here, it's running across my universe and it finds the 5, and there it is there very quickly. There's the same scan where it says these 4 were actually within range. Now, what I do, just as a sense check, I'll look at what the high was, my bid price, and the low, and you can see that the bid price was outside my low. So I know that that formula was actually correct. So that's just a very simple one that I use for that. And as I said, I did it predominantly when I was doing a bunch of back testing, and I hadn't been looking in on the system for quite a while. The next one I'm going to run is the MultiScan. Now, why I've actually do these is I use a couple of systems. I trade GAN as well. So I go looking for turning points, and sometimes these find them for me, sometimes they don't. But I do like to combine these and develop out of these one watch list, which I then go through and throw in another system and put some other rules to and look to see if there's an opportunity there. And this takes me all of, it wouldn't even be 5 minutes to run these, of a day. So what this will look like when you see that I run it, and this is where the importance of the order is not important, but what is important is that you change the radial button and you say use a selected security list for each scan. So it looks at these independently and it runs them independently, and it will put them up as a panel, 1, 2, 3, 4, that will look like this. Now, sometimes you have to shift these around, but what I'm seeing is once you've shifted it, it seems to remember that. System seems to remember that, and you can look at the various results. In this particular one, which is the one I'll run, it didn't meet any of my criteria for 38-day high or a 260-day high, but I got a 38-day low of 2, and I got a, what's that? I think it's about 10 for a 260-day low. What I'll show you is how I can combine these. I think it's this one I do it, combine and make the one watch list out of it. I'm going to run that in MultiScan now. I'm just using the control button, clicking. I've still got my finger on the control button. And this is actually one of the stock standard scans that comes with the system. I'll then take that to the MultiScan, and I then change the radial button. I hope this behaves itself. If it doesn't, I'll just shift them around as they come. So you can see down here, it's doing the first scan now, 1 out of 4. Now it's doing the second scan. And these are independent of each other. Now it's doing the third scan. I don't know if anyone's timing this, but it won't even be a minute. And that's the fourth scan done. Now what I do is I'll just eyeball those just to shift them around a bit in the pane. So what's that? That's the low. Let's put the lows together. 38s together, I'll just line them up. I'll bring this over here. Bring that down there. So you can position them ever how you want to. And then you can just change the screens to make it all, change the size of the window to make it fit, or the pop-up to make it fit. Now, I had planned to do this a bit later in the video. I'm going to do it here now. I think it probably works better. You'll see that when it's run those scans, the last one it ran was this one here, the 260-day low. And it's actually created the last scan in there, and that will be showing up here in my scans. Last scan results. Now, if you want to make one composite watch list from that, I'm holding the left button down, Control, add to the watch list, and I'm adding it for last scan results. And you can see it's added now to the last scan results. So I'll go over here and I'll do the same with these two. Add to the last scan results. And there's your watch list of that grouping of scans. You know, again, I'm not saying these are my particular scans may be of any use to anyone, but you get the drift. And it's from there then that you can just run that out. You can either save it as a watch list, or you can, run it out to a export it out to an Excel, and then do with it what you like. I'm going to get rid of that now. I've just done that, so I won't redo it, but scan results table, the last scan results, you can automate creating a CSV, and you can export the full table to save every column. That's just a 3-column watch list. And that's, again, it's what you were seeing before. I've just done that. Now, as Rob was saying earlier, building the scans, and you'll probably all be familiar with this, but a MultiScan is only as good as its parts. Build each scan and the BullCharts manages a simple 3-step process. And as you thought Rob and I collaborated, we hadn't, either a new or a copy and edit, and tweak the criteria to what you want in your scans. You'll use any indicator or any other line that you might need for your criteria. You may need to write some macros for what you want. And then you auto-organize them as you saw me do, or you organize them as you saw me do. And then once you've done that, you can sort them by category, name, or author in your scans. Now, that's just an example of where that successful bid, unsuccessful bid coming. Really, all it is looking at the pivot of the price pivots, and I'm looking at the bid being the support, level 1 support, based on that formula. And then I say, if the bid price is within the high and the low of this particular day, which is the day after the scan, then print me a successful bid or print me an unsuccessful bid. And that's the formula that sits behind that column you saw. In summary, and this is it, chain them to refine it, results from the preceding scan to narrow the market step by step. You can batch them up for speed, and use the share list option to run several independent scans in the one go. And I find this to be such a time saver. I used to go out and run one and run the other and look at them both and run out separate bloody watch lists and join them together. And, something that was taking me sometimes an hour or an hour and a half, I'm knocking over now in, all of 10, 15 minutes max. Order matters, certainly in the refine mode. And again, you can keep your results on the CSV, or you can save them as a watch list and run other scans off that watch list within BullCharts. And that's predominantly it. So in accordance with the theme, happy scanning in BullCharts. Thanks, Rob.
Very good, Cole. Thank you. Demonstration. And there are still more aspects to BullCharts scans, but we'll have to cover them another day. This scan that I run once a week on a Friday night, in this one, it looks complicated, but it's not, because most of these criteria say show. I've unticked the match all criteria box. When you do that, 2 more columns become visible. Required, and I've only got 2 criteria here that are required. So when I scan through my XJO, the stock is selected and goes into the results table, provided these 2 criteria are met. For all of the others, the criteria doesn't have to be met, and there's a relative importance. And they're all put together so that the total, by doing this, you end up with a score value in the last column of your results table. And by doing it this way, I've worked it out that the importance there adds up to a score of 100. So I can look at lists, and the users of my toolbox members, they'll be familiar with the contents of that. That's my weekly watch list. If we go down to, say, category, have a look at something like this breakout strategy. It's not mine. Whose is this? Leon Wilson. Some of you might be familiar with Leon Wilson. He was based in Tassie. Don't know where he is now. He published a book into second edition, and there are some criteria there that it's worth looking at. Now, there's one criteria there that says close is between 0.2 and 100. When I first got BullCharts 20 odd years ago and started looking at scans, that puzzled me for a long time. That is in dollars. So $0.2 is actually 20 cents. So what this scan says, close is between 20 cents and $100. So that's a rough attempt to eliminate penny dreadfuls. The other thing in Scan Manager, a number of the scans have a little funnel icon in this window. Some have this S figure. The S means that the scan is actually defined in Bull script, as in this example. The other ones use drop downs in the criteria where there are a number of choices. And as I said, we don't really have time to explore all of that tonight. Maybe we should do some focus sessions or choose particular aspects of this another time and run through those. If you've got any preferences, feel free to let me know by email or phone. Thoughts might come to you later as you have a look and explore. I think that's about all that we should cover on scans tonight. I'm zooming here with the control key on my keyboard and my mouse wheel. I can zoom in and out as it suits me, and it focuses around wherever the mouse cursor is. And a lot of you might have realized that, except for a minor excursion, the index has been in this trading range for several months. And if you zoom out to a weekly, there are a couple of ways to do that. And expand that rectangle a bit. The index, some people say that the index is the market. It is, but it isn't. So the index has been range bound in this range since June of last year. That's 13 months. So when you think about that, the next thought that comes to mind is, and this is the all odds, roughly 500 stocks. The next question that comes to mind is that really representative of the majority of stocks in the market? And one way to explore that is to go back to Security Manager and have a look at indices in security types where there are currently 50 indexes, and we can sort this list by name so that all of the S&P ASX 200 sub-indices come together, and you can see that there's the banks, communication services, discretionary, staples, emerging companies, energy, financials, the A-REITs. So by sector, now don't forget, these subsectors are securities within the XJO. It's not the whole of market. If you want to look at the whole of market, you need to go up to industry groups where you can see all of the energy stocks. We just can't see all of those aggregated together. Um, the other thing that some of you might come across is inadvertently changing this panel security manager and rearranging it or taking some of the items from the bottom, like scan manager, and moving that somewhere else. I've moved it away. There it is there. You can do that to the others as well. Layer manager, you can take out if you really want. I don't know why anybody ever would, but sometimes that accidentally happens. In which case, all you've got to do is put it back again. And it should be easy enough to put them together. Dun, 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 dun. Put that in there and put this one in here too. If that rings a bell for you, happy to explain how to do it.
Is anybody using AI, Claude, or ChatGPT to help with their trade selections?
That's a good question, Cole. Sorry, that was Kevin.
Kevin, yeah.
Kevin, yeah, good question, Kevin. Anyone?
Kevin, I'm not using it for trade selections. I certainly do use it for some of the coding and find it to be a great tool. You've just got to keep it honest because it wants to go off on a triangle, and you got to keep bringing it back. But that's what I use it for, and it helps a hell of a lot in some of the more substantive codes that I've done. I often wonder. I often wonder Des Bleakley would probably be far better than AI, but yeah, no, that's how I've been using AI and found it to be pretty good. Yeah.
Cole, thanks for the response there. Kevin, I have encountered a couple of people, BullCharts users, over the last few months, including comment from Brendan Lansdowne, who have said that they have used AI to generate bull script and found it fairly accurate. Which is somewhat surprising given that BullCharts is not very well known in the marketplace. The other thing that surprised me that started that discussion with Brendan a few weeks ago was I just did a Google search and looked at the AI response. Tell me about BullCharts. And I tell you what, AI told me things about BullCharts I had no idea about, including the company. So feel free to do that. In many cases, it's quoting the website and other references.
I had Brent.
Yes, Alex.
Robert, I had a bit of a fiddle with it some while back, just using ChatGPT,
Yeah.
where I had some code in a different language and asked it to convert it to BullScript, and it surprised me how good the results were. Not always perfect, but they were pretty darn close.
Okay. Very good. Interesting to hear. Wonder what the future's going to hold because it's early days. Any other comments, questions, or feedback?
Before you go, in terms of your question about AI and whatever it is, Van Eyck have recently launched an ETF called GOAT, G-O-A-T, which is investing according to AI principles.
Okay.
So it's interesting as regards being out there on the leading edge, actually launched a product using various criteria. I think it's got a whole pile of variables, momentum, market cap, kind of technicals, whatever. But interesting that that's in there and in the market.
The GOAT ETF. I think I've heard of that. I've not looked at it. Here's the price chart for GOAT. They went ex-dividend on the 6th of July. How often do they pay a dividend? The answer will be in the security summary.
I think it's twice a year, but they just changed it to AI, I think maybe in the last couple of weeks, might be a month ago. But they're not short on ego as regards the acronym to name it.
Okay. All right. Aidan, very good. Thanks for that update. We can have a look at GOAT. Last call. Any comments or feedback?
Just very quickly, Robert, I noticed your BullCharts froze there earlier on. What I've noticed since I downloaded the update, I don't think I've ever had BullCharts freeze on me.
Yes.
And I've noticed for about 3 or 4 times now, I've had to, Control Alt Delete and shut the task down and come in again. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure whether there's something in that update that's it doesn't like, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm pausing just to think because that has happened to me 2 times or 3 over the last couple of weeks. And I'm running 51138. And yeah, when you run the task manager, for those of you who haven't seen task manager, here's the task manager that I'm running on my computer. I run this on a third monitor. Usually people look at the processes, list of processes and sort by CPU to see what's hogging the CPU. I show the performance tab so that I can see that memory is half utilized. Sometimes one of my disks goes flat out, 100%, and I can see the Wi-Fi usage. And that's a useful thing to run. If something hangs, like BullCharts, I think what you were just saying is that you look for BullCharts on here if it freezes, and you can right-click and end task. And that's safe to do if anyone needs to end BullCharts. So that's useful information to know. All right. I think it's time to end. Thank you all for your interest and participation. Our next meeting in Melbourne, Tuesday, the 18th of August, the third Tuesday, will be our 20th birthday meeting. It'll be 20 years since I met Brendan at the Trading and Investing Expo Jeff's shared, and I said to him, "Oh, I'm interested in buying this. Have you got a user group?" And he said, "No, but feel free to start one." So guess what? For the sucker I am, I started one with a lady named Helen, nicknamed Daisy. So she and I ran the first couple of user group sessions monthly. We found a venue within a couple of months, and the rest is history. This next webinar will be Tuesday the 25th. I guess that's about 4 weeks from now, or 5, whatever it is. So thank you all for your interest tonight and your participation. I'll end the meeting. I'll stop recording. I always have trouble finding where the stop is. Thank you, everyone. I'll stop recording. Now you can say whatever you like.